A lot of people in the cryptocurrency space have impressive resumes, but let me read you just a few of the things this guy has done. He's the founder and co-founder of 4 startups, including Yen, Agile, VinWiki, and most recently, Emirate.io. He's written 3 books. He has 3 college degrees. He's a race car driver, a husband and a father, and for the purposes of today's inaugural Crypto and Coffee podcast, he's the co-founder and chief evangelist at the new crypto-based Internet of Things startup, Emirate.io. Peter Saddington, it's a pleasure, to have you. How are you doing?
Thanks so much, Crypto Jeb. It is great to be with you, my friend, and I am blessed and honored to be your inaugural guest on this new Crypto and Coffee. It's awesome. Thanks so much.
Good deal. Thank you so much, Peter. We have the Boss Lady mug back, by the way. My subscribers will know what that is. Peter, I'm really excited about today's interview here in the first episode of Coffee and Crypto and Coffee. We had to change the branding, by the way, for those of you guys who know the old name so that matches with our logo. What I really want to touch on today is risk in the cryptocurrency space. I want to touch on risk in cryptocurrency, and I want to touch on risk in the startup space. That's something you have a lot of experience with, being a startup of. You want to just rattle off the companies you've been a part of? It's a pretty impressive resume.
I've been a part of a lot of companies. It's not germane to rattle them all off, but I guess the key idea is that most of my startups have failed. Especially the ones that we couldn't get the leadership to work together, or the product, we didn't have product market fit. And the key idea there is the ones that did succeed are the ones where we had an awesome leadership team and we were able to gel together. And so because of that, and because of the learnings from, working with so many different founders and operators, is that you really have to find the right team and the right leadership. And then even an idea that's maybe just a permutation of other ideas, you could be ridiculously successful. I believe that the leadership team literally is 98% of the success of any startup. And so if you can find that, then you can build something. And if you persevere through it, then you can get to the holy grail, which I've been to a couple of times, acquisition. And obviously the ability to leverage that capital and leverage those earnings of sorts to deploy into new projects, new ideas, and obviously new startups and founders.
Yep. Peter, I think that's great. That's something I tell my people all the time. You guys know we moved into a new office. I tell my people all the time that a company has several different products. It has its actual product. But one of the most important products I think any company has is its people, because without the people that it has and the systems it's built on, nothing gets done. And that's especially true for the leadership team. So I absolutely agree with that.
And there's a lot of risks in there, by the way. So we can talk about that for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely something I want to touch on. Like I said, you obviously, being involved with race cars, cryptos, and startups, know a thing or two about risk. So I think you're the good person to talk to on that, risk being a huge part of the cryptocurrency space. And with that in mind, I just wanted to kind of to kick off, I wanted to ask a question, because as we just talked about, you've been a part of so many startups. One of them, VinWiki, right? You're the co-founder and the chief technology officer over there, right? With Ed Bollian. Am I saying his name
That's
right?
You got it.
I remember.
Yeah, he sold me my first Lambo in 2006.
Really? Yeah, that's right. He's got an exotic car dealership. He always talked about it over on VinWiki. I remember like 3 years ago, I was always watching his stuff. I love that YouTube channel. And of course, that's the YouTube channel for their product with tracking everything. Peter, you're clearly an entrepreneur at heart. How did you figure that out? Because I have a similar story, I think, of discovering a love for building businesses and everything. How did you find out that that's what you enjoy doing? Am I stretching?
No. Actually, I can tell you when it happened. The formulation of becoming an entrepreneur started in the computer lab in Tokyo, Japan, in middle school. So I was living over there in middle school and high school, and they had a computer lab, which was pretty advanced at the time. And we were running Telnet there at BBS. For some of you guys out there, you might not know what that is, but these were old text-based communication platforms. And there was also text-based games that we played on Telnet and BBS. And one of my first lines of code that I wrote was for Telnet, in which I was actually mail bombing, because the security wasn't very good, the internal security of the system. And I would actually mail bomb other students, other my peers and my friends with really crappy code that when they would open up my email, the message from Telnet, it would like take over their computer, overload their RAM, and essentially blow it up. And that really began my journey into crafting and building my own stuff. And I really just enjoyed that type of autonomy, that ability to have mastery over my own self, as well as in a lot of ways to be able to create my own destiny. Because once
Yep.
I figured out that I could code and build things, then my mind opened up to a world, to an infinite possibility world, an infinite possibility mindset, that anything that I wanted to build or create, I could. It
Yeah.
would just take research, it would take effort, and obviously it would take learning to learn that, more specialized or more complex coding mechanisms to do so. And so it really started in middle school in the computer lab back in Tokyo, Japan. My love for entrepreneurship, I didn't know it was entrepreneurship at the time, but essentially just building for myself.
Yep. Hey, I get that. That's exactly what I always found myself doing. I grew up with the internet, so when I was in elementary and middle school, I would just do nothing but. I was the socially awkward kid, so I'd come home and I just play video games all day, and I always found myself drawn to the management games. I remember there was a website I used to play on called Game Node, and there were different there were like 20 different categories of
Yes.
games, and one of them was called management. And I swear I'd played every single one of those games. And then later on, I started getting into like 4X games, real time strategy, Civilization 5, Stellaris. And I always found myself drawn to a game where I could build something and I could
Mm.
see progress and I could see growth and I could move forward and I could make plans and visions and see them come to fruition. And then it all kind of clicked for me about 3 or 4 years ago. And it sounds like that's kind of something similar to what happened to you.
Yeah, very much so. I started my own website building business in the late 90s,
Yeah.
or mid to late 90s, basically creating really what compared to today, really crappy websites with animated GIFs and flame horizontal rules and you got mail, GIFs that were flying out. But I mean, this was the tip of the spear. And I remember during that time, Macromedia Flash came out, an
Mm.
action script for Flash. And
Yep.
so I was one of those
That was
guys
an
in the
action
late
script.
90s that was building those 1 minute intro videos on
Yep.
Flash that you
Hmm.
couldn't skip. You had to watch those things.
I remember
And
those.
so I built those I remember building websites for local landscaping companies. I built websites for little small IT firms, computer repair shops. And so that really built up my chops in terms of selling my services, selling my wares, and selling my skill sets to other individuals. And eventually, or not eventually, but in the late 90s, I ended up getting hired by a Fortune 50 company, Johnson and Johnson, to
Oh.
help them build their first eye care professional learning lab. And so it was awesome. I got to build it in HTML, JavaScript, Java, and Perl, and it was really a great opportunity to understand the side of work that I didn't want to be a part of, because now I was a corporate employee. My title was an S3 engineer, which S3 engineer means that I was so low on the totem pole when I looked up, I still saw dirt. And I mean, I was basically a corporate slave, building this system, which a great system. It was an educational platform for eye care professionals, and it was great experience. But what, I tell you, it was so life draining. I was there for 3.5 years, and it was so life draining that I knew what I didn't want to do. I
Yeah.
knew that I didn't want to build for a large behemoth machine. I didn't want to have project managers breathing down my neck and asking me, how, Peter, when is it going to be done? When is it going to be done? And I didn't want managers who didn't have any contextual understanding of what I was doing and asking me to do stuff that they think. Well, let me give you a great quote. It goes like this:
Okay.
farther you are away from a problem, the easier the solution is. And so the problem with management is they're so far away from the actual problem and the complex code that I needed to write that for them, it was like, Peter, this is only going to be a 15-minute change. I was like, bro, I've been slaving on this since 3 o'clock this morning. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that simple. And so I wanted to remove myself from that world. And so I can count it as a blessing that I did experience corporate America as a corporate employee. And that gave me enough experience to know exactly what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And so after that, I swore off any corporate, cubicle lifestyle and said, hey, I just want to build my own stuff. And fortunately enough for me, I had some really lucky breaks early on, which gave me some really nice contracts with Fortune companies, as well as the Department of Defense. And that helped accelerate my career into the startup space.
Hey, that's huge. That's one of the things that I find a lot of people that I'm 20, so I have a lot of friends that are in college. And one thing I see in a lot of college students is they're going around trying a bunch of different things, not to figure out what they want to do necessarily, but what they end up finding are the things that they don't want to do. And that's just as valuable as knowing what you want to do, because you're eliminating paths and putting yourself on the trajectory for the one that you actually want to go into. So
Exactly.
that's a great thing to happen to someone early on, is to go into something and say, nope, I don't want anything to do with this. Here are the 10 points of this that I hate. And then I can figure out where I want to go from that. That's awesome.
That reminds me of, I'm going to interject here. That reminds me of the Myers-Briggs. So in
Yep.
high school, I took the Myers-Briggs personality test, and I took the military personality test.
Yep.
And what was so funny from that is that the outcome of these two, when I was talking with my counselor about it, because we had to review with our counselor before we do college applications and all that. I remember her saying, well, according to your personality in these two tests, like, you would make a really great librarian or a really great like gardener. And I can remember it clear as day, Jeb. I remember looking at it like, what the hell are you talking about? That I'll be a good librarian and a good like gardener? Why? And I remember her looking at me and say, well, you love data, you love order, and you love building stuff. And so the first parts, she wasn't wrong. I love data, I love order, and I love building stuff, but I knew that I didn't want to be a gardener building, flowers and plants and stuff. And I knew I didn't want to, be in a library building up the bookshelves and ordering them correctly. But she wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. So that was another example of like, okay, now I certainly know that my personality has moved in this direction of building stuff, but I definitely don't want to be a librarian. Definitely don't want to be a gardener. So I'm just going to stay with the entrepreneur route.
Yeah. Hey, I think the entrepreneur, I think there's a very good reason why entrepreneurship is becoming so popular nowadays. And it's because it's one, it encourages you to be better than yourself. We're naturally wanting to see progress. And you can also do whatever you want as an entrepreneur, because you're building what you desire. You can go in any direction. If you want to build a business selling courses on how to underwater basket weave, you can do that nowadays because you have a big enough audience. But I think that's really important for people my age, and for a lot of the people in the cryptocurrency space, is to figure out not only what do I not want to do, not necessarily what do I want to do, because that's a lot harder to figure out actually, but also what am I good at? And that's something I've told people a lot is you need to find and feel free to comment on this, I've always told people you need to find the intersection of what you're good at and what you actually like. Because while work isn't necessarily about doing what you like, you're probably going to be a lot better at it if you do enjoy it.
Oh, I wouldn't disagree with you. I actually use similar vernacular and similar terms with people that are coming to me for advice.
Yep.
Is I always tell them exactly the same, is that the skills that you have that you're the best at, you're always going to be innately good at.
Yep.
And so the whole idea of working on your weaknesses, complete BS.
I agree.
Don't work on your weaknesses. They're always going to be your weaknesses.
Yep.
Focus on your strengths. And I would segment what you say out into two different things. Focus on your strengths, number one, but the two that where we need to look differently here is, number one, what are your strengths? Number two, what do you enjoy doing, which is what you said, what do you like? But number three, how can you make that a service to others?
That's
because
great.
that is how you actually make money. How you make money is the intersection between those three things: your strengths, what you enjoy doing, and can you make it a service to others? And if you can make it a service to others, it's something you enjoy doing and you're innately good at it, then you have the trifecta for creating a startup or a business on your own terms.
Yep. That's great. Hey, Peter, I completely agree with that. That's a great way of putting that. One thing that I saw when I was getting ready for this is I went over on the Agile community and I found something called the Peter Saddington user manual, and I read through that, and that was so interesting to me because when I was reading through that with everything you talked about, not all of it were different people, of course, but a lot of what I was reading in there, it felt like I was reading a biography of myself. You talked about radical authenticity for one. You talked about laying a framework for the next day of what you're going to do. You talked about vision casting and building your future truth, thinking about where you want to be in the future and how you're going to get there. You talked about so much in there, and I really just wanted to I think a lot of people would do a very big service to themselves by doing something similar to what you did for themselves and getting very clear on, hey, I'm good at this, I'm bad at this, this irks me, I love this, this is my passion, this is my history. I think a lot of people could benefit from that. What do you think?
100%. Whenever I start a business, there's only a few requirements that I have
Yep.
for my leadership team and the culture that I want to create.
Mhm.
And I won't talk about the others, but the one of the biggest requirements is that you must create a user manual. So for anyone that's out there that's listening or watching, you can type in Peter Saddington user manual and you can find it online.
Yep.
But what this user manual is a treatise on who you are, how you engage, what your behaviors are, what your strengths are, what you're not so good at, what your pet peeves are, you know, and that allows me, if you're coming into to work with me, it allows me to have a guide of who you are and so that I can understand how to engage with you appropriately. But I love the fact that you took this spin on that it's good for everyone. Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's such a great introspective activity that everyone should do,
Mhm.
is to create your own user guide, your own user manual, because it requires you to put down who you think you are.
Yeah.
It requires you to write down who you believe yourself to be on paper. And that will be a powerful artifact that you can give to other people so that they can quickly understand the nuances about your character, kind of the idiosyncrasies of how you engage, and even some of the nuances of how you deal with conflict and what pisses you off. Because work is not always going to be perfect and we're going to step on each other's toes.
Mhm.
But having a user guide and a user manual just makes it fundamentally clear to everyone else that you're working with of how to engage with you and who you are as a person. But this introspective, idea that you brought up, I think is really crucial, especially for younger individuals
Yep.
who are trying to find themselves. It's just a great introspective activity to write down who you think you are, and you might disagree with it later. That's fine. I update my user manual now and again. I think last year I updated it twice. This year I think I updated it once. But it's a living document of sorts. But it's a great thing that you can refer back to. Frankly, I read my own user manual probably once a quarter
Yeah.
just to make sure that it's still in line with who I really am and the projects that I'm working on. But it's one of those exercises that I think that your listeners should totally do. It could take a long while. I mean, I think my first pass took me a couple hours to write it. But it's a great way to really put down on paper, like, this is who I am and what am I going to do with that, is really the outcome from it, from an introspective activity. Like, now that you've written it down, what are you going to do? Because we need to spur you to action at some level.
Yeah. I think that's huge because I think that's something people my age and a lot of our listeners might be struggling with is figuring out who people are, especially for people my age, but for everyone nowadays, because as the years march on, we're getting to be a significantly more complicated culture. I mean, think about how many career paths there were 2,000 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
not
going to be a
many.
carpenter, you're going to be a fisher, you're going to be a builder, you're going to be a farmer. That's probably about it. So, knowing yourself might not have been quite as important back then. But moving into today, where things are as complicated as they are and human relationships are written down in 280 characters nowadays, I think it's so important, especially for people in cryptocurrency who, in my opinion, are entrepreneurs. We're going to get to that in a little while, for us to know ourselves extremely well. And
Mm,
when you write that user manual, like you said, it's almost like you're writing a constitution of yourself. What are your core values? What do you stand for? Who do you want to become? And
right.
then once you've written it, you can look back at it through like we said, an introspective lens and say, hey, do I still agree with this? Am I wrong? Is there a bias here? I think that's something that people definitely should do. So I'll link that in the description down below for everybody watching. One of the things that you talked about, and this is going to lead us into what I want to talk about with risk, is you talked about in your user manual that you rarely consider risk. And I want to
Mm,
talk about that because you've been involved in multiple startups, like we said. You're an influencer with 77,000 followers on Twitter. You have a massive loyal fan base. You've been an influencer forever. You drive race cars, so you know a thing or two about risk. So, like I said, I wanted us to dive into that. And specifically, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to ask you about Emirate, the startup that you're a part of right now.
yeah. So briefly on Emirate,
Mhm.
I, everyone out there that's listening, Emirate.io is my current startup that we've been pretty much been in stealth mode for the better part of the year, and I finally been activated to go live. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is to make sure that our alpha testers and our beta testers were successful. in our hypotheses around how we wanted to build this product and bring it out to the world. But essentially what Emirate.io is that we have done something that I believe, and this has been something I've been ruminating on for years, is I believe that we have solved many different problems in not only the cryptocurrency space, but the world at large. Number one, in the cryptocurrency space, everyone knows about airdrops. I created the world's first hardware drop,
Yep.
hashtag hardware drop. And this whole idea is to lower the barriers to entry. You don't need to know anything about crypto or mining or digital wallets or exchanges or hash. You don't need to know any of that. We're going to give you our product, which is right here, by the way. We'll give you our product for free. It's a hotspot miner. And our goal is to build the global wireless IoT network of the future. And IoT is growing. And there's lots of vendors, lots of companies that want to hook in to this wireless network. And so we want to build that. And so how do we build it? Well, we give out our hotspot miner for free to anyone. So you can go to emirate.io, sign up and get a free hotspot miner. Actually, if you want to sign up for 5, I'll send you 5. If you want to sign up for 100, I'll send you 100 because it means that you're growing the network. And we're going to reward you for that. We're going to pay you about $25 a month to help us grow the network, and you get paid in helium tokens, which you can translate, which we're going to create a fiat off ramp soon, where you can put that into real cash. And so essentially, it literally is a money minting machine. It costs you about $37, 37 cents, less than $1 a month to run in terms of energy costs. And so I'm solving another problem, what Bitcoin couldn't do, because you can't mine Bitcoin independently because it's just too cost inefficient. And so I've solved that problem, that people now can mine their own cryptocurrency and actually spend it. And a third problem that I believe that we've solved is universal basic income. Now, I know that is a politicized and a political thing. So track with me for those who are immediately offended by this idea. But we as Americans, we might not think of $25 as being a big deal, per month. But 90% of the world, $25 is powerful. It is enabling. And out of that 90% of the world, 50% of the world, $25 USD is life changing. And so if I can give these out to emerging countries and I give them my free hotspot miner and they can now make 25 USD, that literally is a passive income that can allow them to build their own dreams, to go and take the risk, right? The context of what we're talking about here, take the risk to build your new startup, to self-fund your ideas. And that's something that I'm extremely excited about because as a serial entrepreneur and venture capitalist, I've always wanted to deploy capital into great entrepreneurs. And so now I have a mechanism that serves all those purposes. I'll give you a hardware for free. You get to mine and get into cryptocurrency. You also have the ability to spend that money however you want. And third, now you have a self-funding mechanism that can fundamentally change your life, especially at scale. So Cool Spot is our product. This is our little Cool Spots. And you can go to emirate.io and get as many of them from me for free to grow your own business if you like.
Man, that's incredible. You're wrapping up so many amazing things in that product and in that business. You're wrapping up, number one, getting people involved in cryptocurrency, but that's probably, actually not probably, it is secondary to that $25 a month thing you said. Like you said, for someone living in the first world, $25 a month is extra coffee, but for a huge part of the world, we forget about this. Like you said, that's life-changing money. That's not a small amount of money for billions of people.
Yes.
And like you said also, Internet of Things, IoT, is growing exponentially.
19% year over year for the next 5 years. Compounded, by the way, is the estimate. And so we're going to see this $1 trillion industry explode as companies like your IBMs, your Microsofts, right? These companies are looking into leveraging the Internet of Things and having everything connect. And people might say, "Oh, Peter, having everything connect, you're bringing in the mark of the beast, or you're doing, what is this, Skynet or something like that." No. One of the biggest benefits of having things connected is automation of life. And that's a big deal for me. Is I would love to live out a movie-esque script in the morning where I wake up and there's a sensor there that senses that I just woke up. Boom, the shower turns on. boom, coffee part starts.
Goodbye.
Boom, my music begins. My classic music begins in the morning, and it automatically plays to my favorite music, which is Vivaldi, The Four Seasons. It's
There
a
you go.
great way to wake up in the morning. And then when I go downstairs, I have a sensor that tells me that I'm downstairs, and it automatically opens up a screen on my laptop and shows me my schedule. Like, these are all things that make life better. And so an interconnected life is not a scary life. An interconnected life is an automated life, is how I like to say. And an automated life allows, especially us in the first world, more margin to be creative than to be doing administrivia. Like, my time suck is administrivia. My life, the thing that gives me life is my imagination and my ability to create. And so I want to spend most of my time through the day creating, not doing operational and administrivia. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, that's that. So you're helping three people. You're doing three things here, the way I see it. Number one, you're helping people not only in the first world, but also in the third world, where that extra money from the miner is going to be life changing for them. You're helping people in the first world by helping to develop the Internet of Things, because, like you said, our lives are very complicated nowadays. There are so many things that we have to do that we didn't have to do before. Having just even 30 minutes a day back from your life just from things being automated will make a huge difference. And then on top of that, not only is that project able to help, not only is Emirate able to help people in the third world with their mining, and people in the first world by developing Internet of Things, making us more efficient with our time, which is a huge part of satisfaction out of life, is getting time for the things that we really enjoy. You're also working with blockchain to drive blockchain adoption and cryptocurrency adoption, which helps the first and the third world, because Bitcoin is the savior, if you will, against fiat currencies. We don't have to get into all that right now. I'm not a doomsdayer with the US dollar, but at the end of the day, we do know what happens when currencies hyperinflate.
Yeah,
Wealth transfer happens.
Yeah, we want optionality.
Exactly.
Right now, we have limited options because of the huge conglomerate corporations, your telcos, your big banks, and that's not. You don't have to. I don't ever look at that as a negative. I look at it from an entrepreneur standpoint: is can we build more options? Can we give people optionality? And can we give them the opportunity to choose? Because what slavery looks like is when you don't have the opportunity to choose. And so cryptocurrency, in many ways, and then we can extrapolate this for 9 hours, but cryptocurrency is, in my opinion, the entire tech platform, from blockchain, cryptocurrency, finance tokens, security tokens, worker utility tokens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those give us more options for life. And so that's why I'm such a huge proponent of crypto and blockchain, because now we have more options than we ever had before. And because it's a permissionless system, and it's, I think one of the struggles, let me talk on this for a second. I think the whole idea of being permissionless is a great theory. But at the end of the day, when you're in the third world and you're looking to just make 50 cents a day to just survive, you don't care about permissionless systems. You don't care about, there's this thing called crypto that allows me to build whatever I want on this network or build whatever I want on this blockchain. You don't have time for that. You're trying to survive. And so if we give you the ability to self-fund, now you have options. Now you can sit back and say, wow, my requirements for sustainable life have been met. And if that's so, then now I can spend more time creating and building and leveraging that time to make the world and my own life a better place to live. And so that's a real kind of the soul of our company, is that we want to empower three things: empower, enable, and equip people to be the greatest person that they can be. And if we can unfetter them, we can unlock their potential. This is actually something that we talked about at our summit last week, is unlocking potential and activating their potential. Then we, as a conglomerate, we will make the world a better place.
I think that's huge. That's absolutely huge, because there's, it's I'm sure you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't necessarily totally agree with everything on it, but one of the things it talks about that I think is absolutely true is, until you've met your need for, food and water, it's kind of hard to start thinking about, your destiny or your purpose or scientific revolution. And there is a lot of untapped human potential and human capital in the world that's too focused on making sure they can feed themselves that there could be 10 Einsteins by now, but how many of those Einsteins are trying to feed themselves? I think that's huge.
Exactly. That's actually something we talked about in our
Yeah.
summit, was the fact that one of the things I'm extremely excited about is if we can liberate people, then we will have, in my opinion, a scientific renaissance.
Yeah.
We will start having ideas pop out of the woodwork that you never imagined. And people will look back and say, well, how did all these grand ideas, these scalable enterprise and global affecting ideas, how did they come about? How did they emerge? And the simple answer is because they don't have to worry about putting food on their table anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. No, that's huge. That's something that that's why I was drawn to cryptocurrency, was because there is an ability in cryptocurrency like not many other places for people that aren't like serial entrepreneur. If you're a serial entrepreneur, you have millions of dollars of capital. It's, you know, you can go start something and you'll probably be able to make money. But for people down on the ground, because I grew up very poor, it's difficult to get yourself out of that hole. And one of the ways that I saw that you could do that is, hey, you learn how to invest, trade in cryptocurrency, you can at least get over that hump. So you and I kind of saw the same thing, is how do we get people to the point where they can start thinking about long-term purpose, destiny, whatever you want to call it, so that they can free themselves up from those day-to-day and mundane struggles that stand in the way of that. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Peter, I kind of want to go back to the that point that you made in your user manual, rarely consider risk. I think that's actually at the core of what an entrepreneur is. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, how do you perceive risk? How do you get yourself to that point where you are able to rarely consider risk? And what is it like being in the startup environment so much, being part of so many startups?
Great question. And so I think the fuller context of that statement is, I rarely consider risk in my world building. And that's absolutely true. And the reason is because I have 3 graduate degrees. I have an undergrad in computer science and 3 graduate degrees in the social sciences. And I spent a lot of time trying to understand the human mind and in culture. So my first graduate degree is in counseling, focusing on organizational behavior. My second master's was in education, focusing on cognitive learning theory. And my third master's was a master's in divinity. And so technically I could be a Southern Baptist pastor if I wanted to, coming from a Southern Baptist seminary.
There you go.
But, for me, one of the things that I learned from all that education, and especially being, applying a lot of what I've learned to my startups, is that risk is emergent. And what I mean by that is you can never plan for full and total understanding of risk. Yeah. You have some heuristics, you have some empirical evidence and some historicity around risks that you've encountered before in previous projects or previous, your previous life. This is true. However, those risks are never the same in your next project or your next endeavor. And so I finally conceded this idea that risk is really, truly fully emergent. And because you can never plan for risk, then I don't consider that to be a worthwhile thing to care about. What I care more about, and it's not to say that you shouldn't, factor in risk when you're doing investing, for example, or doing any type of monetary transaction. You should probably consider risk, especially with all the scams that are out there, especially the cryptocurrency space. You should consider these things. But we're looking more at the meta level of risk, in that I think so many people let risk become a blocker for them. Oh, if I do this, it's going to risk X. If I try this, it's going to risk Y. If I say this, it's going to, ruin X relationship, that risk. If I try this, what is my parents going to say? My friends, what's the risk of that? If I do this, am I going to lose? Like, okay, great. Those are certainly things that could happen within the entirety of the spectrum of things that could happen, that could emerge. But to have that be a blocker for you, is one of the things that I find to be it's such a travesty, because people get into this analysis paralysis around risk and they never actually get to put their feet on the ground and start moving forward. And so when I say that I rarely consider risk in my world building, what I mean is I really don't. It is there an opportunity? Am I good at it? Is it exciting? Is it something that could benefit myself and humanity? If so, why the hell not? Whenever someone gives me excuses for like the reasons why they're not doing something, my answer, and this is my first answer every time, it just rises out of my gut, is I say, okay, when are you going to do it? Your next life? And then 99% of the time, whenever I say, hey, so you're going to do this in your next life, the response from them always is, well, no. I was like, so when are you going to do it? And the time is always now. I have been, and I can speak as a testimony to this. I have been on the high highs and the low lows. Obviously, it's easy to speak about the high, right? The high highs of getting acquired and getting that 7-figure or 8-figure exit and being able to buy Lambos, right? That's great. That's cool. I get it. But I've also been on the low lows where I had basically $80 in my bank account. I had to use the restroom in paper bags and plastic bags because I couldn't pay for my electricity or my water bill. Actually, you can talk to my wife. The early days with my wife, we couldn't afford electricity and we couldn't afford power and water because my previous startup, I lost millions of dollars and I basically went bankrupt because I risked it all. And what was great about that, the outcome of that is like, I knew that she was my ride or die, because if she could hang out with me when I'm dirt poor, then she should certainly hang out with me when I'm successful. So that was a win from that. But like, the reason I give you these examples is because if you have a desire, if you have a goal to build for yourself and to create for yourself and become an entrepreneur, then you're going to experience all of that. And the real test of your character, the real test of who you are, is whether you're going to get back up and keep going, one foot in front of the other. And so I can tell you stories for days about, basically just slumming it and living off nothing and wondering when I'm going to be able to, if I'm going to be able to pay rent next month. But a seasoned entrepreneur, someone with the doggedness and perseverance and dedication to the goal that they have in mind, or the passion that they want to see turned into a reality, like that should never stop you. Risk it all, because we live in a world where risks, they're often rewarded. Even if you fail, they're rewarded because you learn so much through it. You become a stronger person from it. And frankly, the next time you do it, you're not going to make the same mistakes. And so we learn through doing, we learn through mistakes, we learn through correcting ourselves. And so risks, throw them to the wind, my brother, throw them to the wind, go full out, because guess what? You're not going to do it in your next life.
Yep. Hey, I love that. You're not going to do it in your next life. I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that from you, Peter. That's awesome, because the thing is, number one, I think the risks that people see are actually a lot smaller than they think they are. In the way that, oh, you're going to be humiliated. People are going to forget next week. Oh, you're going to lose your money. Well, you learned how to make money once. You can learn how to do it twice. Oh, people are going to be ashamed of you. Well, at least you tried. They didn't know what you were going through. I think a lot of times the risks that people are worried about nowadays, especially, I mean, I understand back in the day if the risk was you're going to get like killed by a lion or something, but nowadays a lot of the risks that we see are actually, when we put them in perspective of what humans have gone through in the past and what humans are going through nowadays even still, one, they're a lot smaller than we think they are. And even if they're not smaller than we think they are, it's worth trying, because you're going to die someday. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I'm like, one day it's all going to be over, and you've got those last 5 minutes to look back and see, what did I do in this life?
Bro,
did I work? Did I get the most out of myself, or am I going to go into that dark night thinking I left a lot on the table? I left something on the table. And I think that is, honestly, it's kind of morbid, but it's almost like a living for the moment before you die kind of thing. Not that you do, but it's something that I think about. I think about, when I'm leaving this world, what did I leave behind? Because you don't get to take any of it with you.
You're speaking to my heart, man. You're speaking to my heart, Jeb. You really are. I often use the analogy of standing in the arena. And that, at the end of the day, that's where I want to be. And that's where I've actually, this, for the last 2 decades of my life, I've been standing in the arena. Blood on my face, calloused hands, cuts and bruises, sweating profusely, breathing hard, looking up to the sky and the Lord of Lords. And I'm there. like that's the imagery that I have of my life, is that I'm literally in the middle of a sandy arena with blood and guts and calluses and bruises, and I'm staring there, heaving heavily, looking up to the sky. And for me, standing in the arena is where I want to be.
Yep.
There's going to be thousands of people in the crowds, from a ratio of you to maybe millions in the crowds that are jeering and are saying you shouldn't have done it, or you couldn't do it, or you whatever. So much color commentary, bro. You can throw whatever color commentary you want at me, because I'm the one in the arena. I'm the one that tried. I'm the one that might have failed, but at least I gave it my best shot. And for me, that imagery has led me in powerfully in my life, because we have to remember that first off, none of their comments matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
And number two, they're never really thinking about you. They're only thinking about you when you think they're thinking about you. And so if you see the world in that terms, because we're so socially inclined now, right? From Twitter to Instagram to TikTok, you feel like no one's watching you.
Yeah.
Because they might have watched you, but they just scrolled past
no one cares.
You for 15 seconds.
Yep.
So do you, and do you big time. Stand in the arena and appreciate the fact that you're one of the few that are willing to do it, because most aren't.
Yeah, I think that's huge. That's something that I see a lot of people doing that just makes me really sad, because what you're doing when you're in that environment of worried about what other people think is that you're living for them and not for yourselves. And that is where the disconnect is when you're living to make everybody else happy, when quite frankly, they've got a lot else on their mind. They're not thinking about you very much in the first place. So if you fail, they're probably going to forget about it. You're thinking about it a lot more than they are. And even if they were thinking about it all the time, what does it matter? It comes down to an insecurity, I think, in people. And I love that you mentioned the arena, because do you know Lindsey Sterling, the violinist, by chance?
Name sounds familiar. Yeah.
She's a dancing violinist, and she has a song called "The Arena," and she's playing the violin in the arena. And the song opens with a quote by Teddy Roosevelt. I'm just gonna go ahead and read it real quick. Very similar to what you were saying. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly without errors and comes short again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. And I think that's incredible, because at the end of the, nowadays we've got all these superhero movies. You got Spider-Man and Venom and all this, and sometimes you can walk away from those movies thinking, man, I wish I had some kind of adventure. I wish I could just be awesome like that. I wish I could take risks and everything. But superheroes aren't real. I'm just gonna live my normal life. But a lot of people forget that the only way that you have the kind of adventure that we're so drawn to in cinema and film is by taking risks. And that's why I really want to talk about that today, because the way that you get the most out of your life is by making sure that you're taking those risks head on and looking at them not as risks, but as opportunities. Because a lot of people, they look at something and they say, they could have gone two ways. They could have looked at it and said, how is this going to go right? What's the benefit here? How can I help humanity? What can I do for the world? How can I help my community, my church, and my family? But a lot of people instead, they take the other route. They take the route that's often followed. They take the route of saying, how could this go wrong? How could this fail? How could this backfire? And I really wonder where that comes from. I'd love your take on that. Is that something wrong with our society, or is that built into humans? There is a certain fear of the unknown and risk in humans, but I wonder if it's amplified by the way we live somewhat safe lives nowadays. But
yes,
go ahead.
I'm in complete agreement with you. This type of psychosis that our world has today is a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, I grew up in the 80s. So for me, I grew up in an age where I came home from school at 3:20, 3:15, and my parents said, just come home for dinner at 6.
Yeah.
And then I would be off on my bike, riding around town with my friends and doing cops and robbers and doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, I lived in a different world before cell phones, before constant contact and social media. Like if I had a friend, I remember I had a friend in Oregon when I was living in Japan. I would literally write her, a literal note. I was about to say email, but email wasn't around back then. I wrote her notes, and, on paper, letters and paper, and it would take
Old
3
school.
months to get to her by ship from Tokyo all the way over to Oregon.
Yeah.
And then I would just wait and see if she responded, because I didn't want to pay the telephone fee. So when I came back to the States, that's when I would call her. She was a childhood friend. But like, I lived in a world where we weren't like this. And I remember that world, and I feel like, and I can reminisce on it, and I think I can make it more flowery than it was. But at the same time, we were so disconnected with what's going on with the world that it gave us the ability to have actually childhoods and actually have freedom to create and to live. And so this whole phenomenon of the social implications and social awareness that we have today is something that's new, and it's changing us. And I think in good ways, but also bad ways. And the bad ways are often the ones that are more focused on, which is everyone's watching me. I need to curate my posts and make sure that everything looks fine and dandy on my Instagram, and it looks like my life is perfect. Like, this is a new psychosis. This is a new phenomenon in our world. And I think what people have done is they have replaced true, and this is the core here, they have replaced true identity of self. And what they have done is they have passed off their identity to other people to own. Does that make sense?
That makes
so
total
I
sense.
know for me, my identity is not this body. My identity is in my soul. It's in my spirit. It is what has been God given to me, God granted to me, God breathed into me. My identity goes beyond the bounds of this empty mortal shell that I have, right? And that's where I am secure, which is why I love the fact that you brought up my README, my user guide, is that I don't mind being radically authentic about who I am, flaws and all, scars and all, because that's who I really am. I'm not a perfect person. I got a fragile and shell, but my identity is in my soul. My identity is deep within my heart. What people have done is they've outsourced their identity. They've given it to other people, and they said, hey, you on Instagram, or you on TikTok, or you on Facebook or YouTube or whatever you say is going to be who I am. And no, they don't know jack about you. They just saw you on a YouTube clip or an Instagram clip, and that's what they think you are. And so what we've done is we've outsourced our identity to the social world. And that is why we're having so many people overly considering what other people think about them, when in reality, those thoughts from other people have no contextual relativity to who you truly are.
Yeah, no, dude, that's huge. That's something that I think the problem is, and we're getting a little bit away from the risk thing, but I think this is so important. The fear sells, and that's known. And the internet has given the ability for us to sell fear to people. Fear of social stigma, fear of social isolation, fear of failure. And when you think about it, a lot of times we have a relatively cushy life. Even the people that aren't doing so well in the first world are doing pretty well compared to most of human history. So when you look at it that way, and you watch movies or study history, for example, and you see how bad things can be, we think subconsciously we have so much. And then we subconsciously, because of social media especially, start focusing on the ability to lose that instead of the ability of, well, what else can we do? How else can we benefit the world? How else can we drive progress forward? And I think that is so big about outsourcing identity. People are so concerned about what other people think of them. Look, I don't really care. I will meet somebody and tell them some of my deepest, darkest secrets if it's only my secret and not like a secret that's shared between me and someone else. I will totally open straight up with people. It's gotten me in trouble before, being so like, they're like, I just met you. What are you doing telling me this about you? I'm like, I don't care. Like, I have nothing to do with you. When speaking of souls, my soul and my identity, my person has nothing to do with what you think of it.
Exactly, 100%. I'm not immune. I'm not immune to this, and I'll concede that.
And neither am
I'll
I.
give you an example. I mean, when I was fired years ago from my own startup,
Mm.
So I founded a startup, venture funded for less than $5 million, just about $5 million. I ended up being fired because I gave over control to a CEO, and he ended up firing me from my own startup. I was crushed, Jeb. I was destroyed. And in that moment, and I'll just speak briefly about it. In that moment, I had some serious identity issues. I'll concede it because it's part of kind of the risks of being an entrepreneur is that you wrap yourself and part of your identity into what you're doing and the passion that you have for this project. And I remember so clearly so many moments of like, man, how am I going to let the world know? How am I going to communicate this? How am I going to tell people that? I mean, how embarrassing is this that I was literally fired from my own startup that I created? And that, but it took months. It took about 3 months for me to get out of my funk and realize once again that my identity isn't that failure. My identity wasn't the fact that there was, some real misalignment at leadership and they didn't feel like I was the right person to take this to the next level. And these are great learnings, but here I am today, a better and more whole person because of it. And now if an event like that happens, it's not going to take me 3 months, 90 days to get over it. I'll probably be over the next day. I'll be like, bro, on to the next one. Just get back in the arena and fight the good fight.
Yeah, and hey, look, I just want to be clear. One, I'm not immune to that either. That happens to me all the time. It's something I struggle with. And two, it's easy to struggle with that. It's not an easy thing to detach yourself from that because it's so deeply ingrained in who we are, the social aspect of humanity. What do people think of me? It's hard to detach yourself from that. And there's a certain element of it that's good. You don't want to just walk around not caring what anyone thinks because then you'd be, running over people and whatnot. And we wouldn't have courtesy. But there's also an element of you need to make sure that you're not intertwining your identity with what people think about you specifically, but people just in general. What are some of the things you learn from that perspective that most people don't walk through?
Well, when it comes to startups and entrepreneurship, I believe that everyone, and there's that sound again.
Huh.
Like a
That's so strange.
It's all good. You can block it out.
Sorry.
Well, it's all good. When it comes to entrepreneurs and startups, everyone, in my opinion, should be an entrepreneur, should be creating something. And I'll tell you the reason why. I believe in my heart of hearts that we were built to create. We were built to build. We were built to make things. It is a fantasy that we live in many ways, where people literally wake up, they hate their commute. Well, not commuting so much anymore, but understand my point. Yeah. They hate their commute. They sit in a gray cubicle. They hate their life. And then they go home at 5 o'clock and they're just dead. Like, that is not a life worth living. And I know some people might be offended by that and say, oh, but I really great. If you like your job and you like all that, wonderful. I'm not talking to you. But I think so many people have forfeited their natural creativity. They have forfeited their ingenuity. They have forfeited what I believe to be their God-given internal motivators. I mean, if you think about anything about humanity can be identified as one thing that makes us different from any of the other animal creatures. We create out of nothing. We have that sign, that sigma. We have that same identity of our creator who created us. We are built and made to create. And so because of that, and that's my foundational logic, because that I believe that we were all built to build and all built to create, that you, if you're listening out there or watching out there, you should be doing that too. I believe that is where life really begins. I believe that is where life really becomes fulfilling. Because let's be honest, whenever you hear of a champion or someone who succeeded in business, they always tell you the same story. The story is that something happened. They were spurred to create. They had the ups and downs, the low lows and the high highs, but they persevered through it. And man, they're at the mountaintop and it was worth every second. I've never heard a champion story or a winner story where they said, yeah, I really hate it. And I wish this never happened. No. It's never that. It's always, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I suffered. I'm glad I persevered through that. I'm glad I didn't quit.
Yep.
you know? And so that that right there, that right there, I believe is really the hallmark of humanity, is that we were all built to create and that you should be an entrepreneur. You should build something. So for everyone out there, it's just a matter of finding the intersection. What are your strengths? What do you enjoy doing? And how can you make it a service to others?
I think that's amazing, Peter. I completely agree with you. I think that's at the essence of who we are as humans is creators. We are put on this earth to create things for our sake, for our family's sake, for our community's sake, for our culture's sake. Um, but that does carry with it the risk, of course, because when you're creating something, there's a chance that it won't be adopted or that it'll be there'll be a failure. You'll lose money, and like we talked about, people are drawn to that risk. And it's not that they should be, but I want to help our viewers, and I want to get your opinion on this with cryptocurrency. You've been in cryptocurrency for how long now?
Almost a decade. I
Almost
bought my
a
first
decade.
Bitcoin in 2000, November of 2011.
Wow, there you go. I bought my first Bitcoin in August of 2017, so you've been here significantly longer than I have. I was in middle school when you bought your first Bitcoin.
There you go.
So in that, you've seen the $1,300 high back in 2013, Mount Gox. You've seen the massive crash. You saw the 2017 bull market up to 20K. You saw Bitcoin hit $4,000 from
Yep.
that. There's a lot of ups and downs in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin goes up, down, sideways, backwards, forwards. You see that in startups too. How do you keep your emotions in check? And let's just kind of wrap everything we've talked about up into a neat bow on that, and then I'll ask a couple more questions and we'll let you go. But how do you keep your emotions in check, and how do you make that risk not affect you mentally? Because it can be very easy for people when their finances are in flux to get
Right.
affected mentally, not just financially.
Well,
What do you-
I'll give you the answer. The answer is simple. Uh, if your emotions are attached to your investment, then you've already broken one of the hallmark rules, is that you do not invest with bread money.
Yep,
You don't
that's
ever
correct.
invest with bread money, because when you invest with bread money and the bread money goes away because you made a poor decision, then you're sweating bullets.
Yep.
And so one of the first rules of any type of investing is don't invest your bread money. Invest money that you can essentially consider as loss,
Yep.
as a risk, if we're going to use those terms there. But the other thing that can help remove some of the kind of the turmoil and some of the emotional turmoil that you can have with investing and being in cryptocurrency is understand the fundamentals. And I know that's basic. I know people have heard that. Do your own research and understand the fundamentals, but it's absolutely true. One of the reasons why I only pretty much invest in Bitcoin and not any other altcoins is because I know Bitcoin inside and out. Like, I know it better than any other project because that's where I began. I read Satoshi's white paper. I consumed it. I created code. I forked. Some of my old subscribers know that I forked Bitcoin. I also forked Litecoin in my attempts to experiment and learn how to build my own chain. And so, because I understand Bitcoin and the fundamentals so well, I'll give you an example. Bitcoin is a protocol, and because it's a protocol, it can never be uninvented. That's actually one of my quotes from 2017 that people have made a meme about is Bitcoin can't be uninvented. It's a protocol, just like the internet's a protocol, and the internet is expanding every day to new countries, new markets, new segments, and new people. Likewise, Bitcoin being a protocol, because it can't be uninvented, will continue to expand into new countries, new markets, new people, new cultures. And so Bitcoin, if you understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin, that is a not foolproof, but it is a great assurance that your investment is going to be worthwhile over time. What people do is they wrap up their emotions with the financials, number one, but number two, they don't understand the fundamentals behind it. And so doing really deep diligence on any tokens or coins or projects that you're looking to invest in is absolutely crucial. And once you make that decision to invest, make sure that you don't invest your bread money. That way, you're not letting the roller coaster of speculation and speculative investing affect who you are inside.
Yep. I think that's huge. Though that you basically just touched on two of the biggest things I talk about with one of my employees just bought a good amount of Bitcoin because they were seeing what Bitcoin was doing. And I told them two things, the same two things I tell my channel all the time. Number one, trade to learn, not to earn. And make sure you're investing in your education, because an investment in yourself is the best investment you'll ever make. If you don't understand, one, how you operate, how you work in the environment of trading, investing, cryptocurrency, and two, you don't understand how the thing you're investing in works in the first place, you shouldn't be investing. But on top of that, the way that I always say almost exactly what you just said is in the light of never investing more than you're willing to lose. I tell people all the time, Think about it like this. If you can't take that money out of your bank account into dollar bills, put it in the backyard and set it on fire, if you can do that with that money and you can still pay your bills, invest half of that. That's the number. That's people ask me all the time, how much should I invest? I hate that question because it's always the same answer. Burn the money. What's half of it? Don't invest more than that. I don't know the number. I don't know your finances, but make sure you're not investing more than you're willing to lose, and make sure you actually understand what you're investing in, and make sure you actually understand yourself. So that's huge. That's how you can stop yourself from getting wrapped up in the risk of Bitcoin collapsing or something, which I don't think it's ever going to do. I think Bitcoin has a very bright future because of what you just talked about with it being a protocol, it being immutable, decentralized, as a hard cap, it's non-inflationary. I think Bitcoin has great fundamentals, but on top of that, I'm not concerned about my investments because if I lose them and walk away, I'm solid.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not the greatest example to give because I in 2016, 17, I liquidated all of my portfolio and only invested in Bitcoin.
Yep.
That's how hardcore I was.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a great example of this. And certainly my accountant hated it. He was like, what are you doing? You want to liquidate your Roth, your IRA, your money market. You want to liquidate your stocks. You want to liquidate all these other investment vehicles. Like, bro, like, he literally said, it was like a come to Jesus meeting. I remember he was like, bro, do you need help? Like, what's going on? And I remember telling him, I was like, no, I want to invest everything that I have in Bitcoin. And he literally looked at me and is like, what's Bitcoin? And I was like, bro, I could spend a lot of time explaining it to you. We'll talk later. I just need you to liquidate all my accounts. And he's like, no, but you're going to lose 50% on, on fees. And you're going to lose 65% on pulling it out early. I was like, I don't care. I can make more money in a month than this 0.002% that you're giving me on this money market account, bro. Give me my money. Yeah. So I'm not a great example of that, but I believe so strongly in the longevity of Bitcoin that I've created an entire career and I build products out of it. And so for me, I'm not the greatest example, but I for those that want to and need to be encouraged by me because Bitcoin's not going away. It's not. Cryptocurrency is not going away. I've been in here nearly a decade now. I've built multiple cryptocurrency apps in it, and I've eaten the risk. I've considered the risks of doing so. And for me, I'm all in.
Hey, and I think that I completely agree with you. I think the fundamentals of Bitcoin speak for themselves, and a lot of people get too caught up in the day-to-day and they forget the long-term picture. Peter, I have one more question for you, but before I ask that'll be our final question. I just want to open the floor to you. Is there anything you want to talk about, any concept you want to bring up, anything you want to mention about Emirate, anything that you want to bring up? Here's your chance, man.
Well, I just love this opportunity, Jeb, to talk to great people. And so I want to invite your community to check out emirate.io. There's obviously no commitment, but let's be honest. I'm going to ship you something for free. It's a hardware miner and you might as well take it. Yep. And if you're really entrepreneurial out there, then you might want to become one of our RDPs, which is a regional deployment partner. I will outfit you with hundreds of these cool hotspots. And so you just need to tell me what you want to do with it and how you want to grow your own business around it. And so to everyone out there, just check out emirate.io, read our business case, our business vision, which is one of the first links on emirate.io. We're radically transparent. So if you do read it, please read it with a discerning eye, because if you read it with a discerning eye, you will know our grand plans. You will know how we're going to be successful. You will see why what we're doing is in many ways, in my opinion, unstoppable, because our value proposition is great. It's free and you make money on it. And it gets you into crypto. Yep. And if it speaks a little bit to the fundamentals of Helium, Helium is not Helium token. So Helium's been around for 7 years, built by Amir Halim and the founder. And over the last 7 years, we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about different types of tokens, different types of side chains, and how the economic incentives as well as the economies of scale work. And Helium is a utility/work token. It's not a security token, and it's not a financial monetary policy token. It's not a store of value token. And so if you know anything about the fundamentals of work or utility tokens, you will know that the value of work and utility tokens is a linear growth pattern. In theory, it's not logarithmic, it's linear, which essentially means that the more use of the work token, the more use of the network, the token will increase in value linearly, not exponentially based on any type of speculation. So why do I say all that? The reason I'm saying that is because we are going to give you a cool spot miner for free that'll mine you helium that is on a linear path of growth, which means the more the network grows, the more value it'll have. You guys can figure out the nuances and the shades of gray between that. Yep. So it is a great investment to make. Let me put it that way.
I think that's awesome, Peter. We'll have all those links in the description down below to emirate.io and social media plugs, anything that people ought to check out. I'm going to have everything linked in the description, but point them that way first.
Obviously, check out, you can check out our Twitter, emirate.io. You can obviously follow me on Twitter at AgilePeter. That's where I'm tweeting out daily videos of what's going on with our company and how we're growing this awesome project.
Yeah, man, I love those vlogs. We watched, I forget, we watched 2 or 3 of them here in the office on the television we have out there to get ready for this. And everybody love those. No, that's just awesome. That's one of the things I want to start doing in the future is kind of a vlog of what's going on behind the scenes. People don't really see the behind the scenes business stuff. They just see the landing pages. But Peter, there's one last question that I want to ask you. I want to start asking everybody this in these to wrap everything out. In my experience in business and in trading and in life in general, your mindset, the way you view the world and what happens to you in that world matters a lot. And that's something you talked about in the Peter Saddington, help me out here. The Read Me. Thank you. It's very important that we have a perspective built on the way that we look at the world, and that we make sure our mindset isn't just something that is emergent from our experiences, but we actually look at it and we think, how do we want to view the world? What's our mindset going to be moving forward? So if I were to wrap out, I want to ask you, if you had one thing you could change everyone's mindset on, be that in cryptocurrency or in general or in business and startups, wherever you want, what would you encourage people to work on in their mindset?
Positivity. Easy. That's easy.
Yep.
Positivity. People, and I love that you asked this question because I'm so passionate about the answer. Your entire world is determined by this noodle up here, this noggin that you have. Your entire world starts there. And if you wake up with negativity and you wake up with anything different from positivity, then that shapes your world. I believe in deeply, and I'm a living example of this, in vision casting your future and imagining and using your imagination to pre-build the future. Every single farmer, this is an easy example, and I use it a lot with executives. Every single farmer already knows the outcome of their labor. They wouldn't labor all season planting, seeds and tilling the ground for a variable outcome. They already know the outcome. The outcome is in acres and acres of corn or acres and acres of apples or whatever they're making, right? So we as humans are the only creatures on the planet with the mental faculty of creating a reality before we actually live that reality. And so an example right here is my garage. I built this garage in my mind 3 years before we built the house. I knew exactly where I wanted to sit at this table. I knew exactly that I want to have a screen here and a screen here, my bench behind me, a bench here, and I wanted to work on race cars, exotic cars, and go-karts. I knew that years before we even built this. So I'm a living example of leveraging my imagination and creativity to creating realities before I actually live them out. Now, why is this important? And also in conjunction with positivity, is that your mindset literally determines your reality. And so if you keep a positive mindset, then everything is open to you. When you have a negative mindset, things become narrow. Your options become more limited. You think more about the risks and the negative things, right? Like, don't do that. Wake up every morning with a can-do, positive attitude and begin creating the worlds in your mind of where you want to be. And trust me, if you keep that in mind, you will end up building what you want. And the reason is because our feet and our hands are merely reacting to what our mind wants. And so every day I meditate on my future. I meditate on what I want to build. I've already envisioned standing at conferences, which I've done many times before, but I already know what it looks like to stand at these large conferences and talk to people about Emirate and talk about CoolSpot and talk about the product that I want to release. I can already see myself in councils and at tables talking to people and executives and leaders about this. I've already imagined all of this. And so because I'm constantly thinking about this future that I want, my hands, my feet, and my mouth generally move in that direction because that's where my mind is locked. And so this is the power of positive thinking. This is the power of projecting your future, is that if you have your future in mind and you keep that in mind all day, what did I think it was Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor.
Roman emperor.
I think he said this. He said something to the effect of, man is what we make it. Right? Your man is what we make of it. Mm-hmm. And what he meant by that, I know I got the quote wrong, but essentially is whatever you think about is what you become, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's so true, right? I knew that I wanted to do this. And so I built it and I've created it. My hands and my mouth and my feet began walking that direction. And so that's the power of positive thinking. That's the power of projecting your future. And it works. It works. It's not the secret, that book and thinking about things and suddenly money's going to come. No, you actually have to do the work for sure. But man, I'll tell you, I come across, Jeb, so many people where the glass is half empty and their life is just crappy. Mm-hmm. It's like, bro, it's because you built that reality.
You chose it to be that way.
Yeah. You chose that life and you are living that life.
Exactly. No, I think that's huge. That's something that there's an entrepreneur that I watch probably every single video this guy's ever made. His name's Patrick Bet-David. You familiar with him? Yeah, he talks about building your future truth in your mind and vision casting like you talked about. And that's one of the reasons why when I was reading that user manual, I was blanking on the name, or the user manual earlier, I saw that. I'm like, I see myself in this, and I see other great entrepreneurs in this, because that is how you get to greatness, is by first building it in your mind, because you're not going to go on a road trip without a destination. You're going to turn around after 100 miles because you got bored. But if you have a place that you're going, you will stop at nothing because you understand how great it's going to feel once you got there. And that's something that I've internalized in my life. And if I can just tell you a short story, it was about a month and a half ago. I was at a Miller's Ale House on a Saturday with a couple of friends, and I was talking to them about the entrepreneur Grant Cardone. And this, do you know who he is?
Yeah, real estate mogul.
Yeah, the real estate guy. Yeah, I was talking to them about, we were talking about marriage or something, and they were saying how rich he is. I'm like, they were talking about his wife. They said his wife must be a gold digger or something. I was like, well, his wife only married him when he was worth like $50 million. He's like a billionaire now. And they both jumped down my throat, and they're like, only $50 million. Yeah, okay, Jeb, that's a ton of money. Only $50 million. And I wouldn't back down on that with the word only. And I said, no. Only $50 million, because the vision I have for what I want to do with the company we're building here, with helping hundreds of thousands, millions of people have easier access to education that will help them in their lives through financial education, understanding of economics. The vision I have necessitates that $50 million be a small amount of money, so I'm going to adopt that into my mindset today so that it can guide me to where I'm going in the future. And that's something that you can't see if you're stuck in this paralysis of analysis, and you're stuck worrying about the risk of what will happen, what will go wrong if things don't go well, what's going to happen to you. You get two options. You can either look at the positives and you can build your future truth and vision cast, or you can look at the risk and you can think what will go wrong. But at the end of the day, you're not forced in either direction. You get to choose that. And that, at the end of the day, I think is one of the pathways that you have to walk down to greatness in whatever we're doing, whether that be trading, investing, or building businesses.
Absolutely. Your mindset creates your reality. Is kind of the TLDR of this, is that if you have just understand that. And here's the thing, like I tell my kids this all the time. I tell my kids, you never have to react or respond to how you feel.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. You never have to react or respond to how you feel. If you feel crappy and someone said something mean to you, guess what? You don't have to react. You can say nothing. You can walk away. You can ignore them. But if you let them get into your head, then you're going to have negativity swirling up there. And so whenever something happens, a variable of life happens, you have 100% choice of whether you react positively to it or you react negatively to it. my choice these days as an almost 40-year-old man, like for me, come what may, brother, I'm gonna look at it as a positive because I know that that positivity is going to turn that into an opportunity or a learning opportunity. And if I look at it negatively, then I get introspective, I get salty, and then I'm like, I don't want to do it. Like I've been down that path. No one wins when you're negative. And frankly, pretty much everyone in the world only wants to hang out with positive people. And the more positive you are, the more network you create, the more opportunities emerge. So it's a win-win-win-win.
Peter, I think that's great. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I don't want to keep you any longer. Any closing thoughts?
No, man, this has been a blessing, Jeb. I'm so glad I could be your first honorary guest of this new crypto podcast, Crypto and Coffee, or Coffee and Crypto. And I'll be thinking about you, man, and I'll be hoping for the best as you grow this out. Let me know how I can help, how I can spread the word. I want to help you succeed.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much for being on. Bye, guys.